And good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we also want to be live on Facebook on Atlanta Falcons Fans on All Falcons, which is pushing almost hitting 1 million people this month, the last 28 days. So it's been very popular. Thank you very much to all of y'all. And Scott Kennedy Sports on Facebook. And welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is a gut reaction morning after, so more of a morning after let's feel things out reaction. You get a chance to sleep on it overnight. And on a back-to-back Falcons winning Monday to finish the season 7-10, identical to the record they had last year, but it's a very different feel to this team coming out of the 2022 season. Nick, good morning. My name is Scott Kennedy. I go by Scout Kennedy on my various social media channels. You can find me at Scout Kennedy on Twitter. You can find me at Scott Kennedy on YouTube, where you probably found me today. And Nick Kendell is in Seattle, so we are coast to coast with our football takes this morning. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Excited about the Broncos coming off a win and excited about this Falcons team. I mean, we always knew that this year was going to be kind of a year that you had to stomach, get this one down, keep this one down, and then you can kind of really go from there. And ending on a high note as well, beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And things are looking up in Atlanta. And this was a fun game. A lot of young players stepped up and had impacts on the game from the previous two draft classes. So feeling pretty good. I guess I do have a little bit of the Monday scare, or they say Sunday scaries, right? But it's the Monday scaries, right? The first full week in 2 weeks because of Christmas and New Year's. But other than that, doing pretty well.
I know, and they make up for it with my kids by having Monday and Tuesday off of next week. I swear to God, kids these days, they don't get much of a summer. They only get 2 months of summers now. We used to get a full 3 months. But they only have 5-day school week like 4 times all year. This happens to be one of them. This is usually when one of them ends up getting sick. Like, oh, I don't feel good. Like, yeah, couldn't make the 5 days, huh? Anyway, I actually went to elementary school with a kid. Shout out to Matt Stephanie. If this ever finds you anywhere, I'll never forget this. Matt Stephanie didn't miss a day of elementary school in 6 years. Perfect attendance in 6 years of elementary school. My kids can't go a month. They're soft. Of course, they also don't want you coming to school now if you've got so much as a sniffle. On that note, let's say hello to some folks in the chat. Michael Ranquillo coming in from Arizona was the first one. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. And AE coming in on YouTube. He says, good morning, fellas. Give Desmond Ritter 10 more pounds, a center or left guard, and Kyle at wide receiver 1, and he'll be okay. And Pruitt and Fursker at tight end, and then Tyler Allgeier can be that bell cow. Look pretty good, at times this year, that's for sure. And then, CP's not going anywhere. He got a 3-year deal that was at least a 2-year deal. If anything, you might want to rework it and help put another year on that deal the way he's still playing the Fountain of Youth. Michael Mitchell, it feels like a newer name, Michael. Coming in. So good morning. Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Says if Mariota was a starting QB, then it's a no-brainer that Ritter could be the starting QB next year. Yeah, when I first read this, it took me a second, and I actually process things better audio-wise. So as soon as I read it out loud, it made sense. If Mariota can be a starting quarterback on this team, obviously Ritter can. Ritter. And let me bring this up here real quick. Tori I'm going to butcher your name, Tori. Mikhail Haney. That's a tough one. Mikhail Haney. Anyway, here's her name. She's a beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons, and she actually did a poll. Do you want to see Desmond Ritter as your starting quarterback next year? And that was pretty conclusive. Mm-hmm. It was 82% voted yes of Falcons fans, and that's pretty good. And I think he did enough that people say, yeah, I don't necessarily want to use a top pick on the draft, Nick. I don't want to use a top pick on this draft. I want to give Desmond Ritter a chance here. That came through okay. Y'all saw that, right? It flashed and everything. But, I think that was a pretty solid poll because Twitter is not exactly the most positive environment in the world, and to get an 82% after the game, that's a pretty good vote of confidence from your fan base.
Yeah, I will say Twitter is very reactive. It's very in the moment, and Desmond Ritter coming off a game with a lot of flashes on, money downs, third downs, creating plays. Obviously not a perfect game. I still don't know what happened in that fumble that he had in that game where the ball just like popped. There was like a glitch. That's like something like if that happened in Madden, but like, you stupid game, it was in his hand. How does that happen? It doesn't just slip through his hand.
I said that about Aaron Rodgers when he hung 50 on us at the Dome in 2011. I said if someone was making throws against me like this in Madden, sprinting hard right and throwing it 50 yards downfield on a dime, I'd say this thing is ridiculous. You can't do this. So yeah, I know what you mean. What happened here? This is a glitch.
It definitely glitched on that one, but he had a good game. A lot of good throws. Him and Drake London had a great, it seemed like 3rd and 4th down connection there. As far as Desmond Ridder being the quarterback next year, one game isn't going to change what I'm saying on this. I think there's obviously stuff to build on, but you are picking, 7th in the draft, 8th in the draft, 8th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you
lost at the top, I put that in the title. So let's get that right off the top. We are the Atlanta Falcons have the 8th pick. And Nick, I asked a bunch of people. I asked on one of my pages. I said, "Would it be worth beating Tampa to drop a spot in the draft?" And people were like, "Hell yes, it would."
One spot, yeah.
One spot, yeah, it would. We never have to hear, Tom Brady never lost to the Falcons. Yeah, that L counts. That L counts now. So you don't ever have to hear that again. Worth one spot from 7 to 8. Yes. From 1 to 2. No.
Sorry, Texans fans. But I come back to the same thing I've said the whole time. And if I'm nothing but if not consistent, I guess. Desmond Ridder looked good here. And if you want to roll with him next season, that's fine. The Falcons can. The Falcons should. The Falcons will put in work on this quarterback class. You're picking this high. You don't know if you're going to be here again. You didn't like Desmond Ridder enough to pick him until your 4th pick in last year's draft class. Obviously, things change. You have new data here. He looked competent. He looked to be exciting this season, but you are going to put in work on Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. And if you like one of those guys more, it's going to be a tough decision. And it's not because of Ridder. It's because of where you're at and because of the evaluation you have on those other guys. Which, fair or not to Ridder. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. So we'll see what happens here. But I mean, would I be confident going into next season with Ridder? Yes. Am I confident that Ridder is a 15-year franchise quarterback? No.
Yeah, I get that. And it's a small sample size. Mm-hmm. And his 2 wins came against Arizona Cardinals, who, at the end of the season, and then Tampa Bay, who had kind of shut it down. I get all that. But what you see is encouraging.
Yes.
The binary nature of discussions on the internet get really annoying. It's like, it's not yes or no. It's like, oh, you guys are hyping this guy up, or this guy sucks. He threw for 20 yards in the first half. It's in between somewhere. Yeah, I'm encouraged with what I saw. Do I think he is the long-term answer for the Atlanta Falcons? Not yet. Am I willing to go into next year with him as a starting quarterback, knowing you've got so many other holes you can then address? Yeah, I think he's good enough that I'd be willing to roll. If this was, if I was one player away and I had a hole at left tackle, I'd want to be a little bit more sure about it. But why not? And Michael, good morning, coming in on Facebook. Appreciate you coming in. Why not go get a competent $7 million a year Teddy Bridgewater type, Geno Smith type. Geno Smith played his way out of that, but that's what he was coming into this season.
Yeah.
Geno Smith type player to come in and compete. Ridder, you're way ahead. You've got a year in this. It's your job to lose, but go spend $6 million on a backup. You haven't had that luxury with the Atlanta Falcons for years. You need a 17-game season. You're gonna need a guy to play 3 or 4 games more than likely. Over the course of a season. Why not have a guy that can come in and play pretty well? 30 years old or older, somewhere in that neighborhood that's willing to get a nice check and be a backup quarterback for a while, but come in and do a job when it counts.
Yep. I definitely think that's possible. Again, it'll come around first to your evaluation of this class, in my opinion, where you want how aggressive you want to be there. And if you want to go get a guy, I mean, another thing is you're probably not going to be picking top 10 next year. Obviously, the future is yet to be written. But if, let's say, next season, the infrastructure around Ridder looks a lot better and he plays like a bottom 12 quarterback, well, you might be SOL in terms of the quarterback conversation. The other one to follow here, and Falcons fans should have their ear to the ground on this, does seem like there's way more smoke than there's ever been about Lamar Jackson getting moved. And that is one that is at least worth following. right now, seems like the early favorite might be the Jets. That might just be the New York media machine pushing
I
that.
like Derek Carr to the Jets. For some reason, that just feels like and I like Lamar Jackson, but if it took a Deshaun Watson deal to get Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't want it.
No.
I wouldn't want to give up. What was it? It ended up being 3 first-round picks, and $250 million guaranteed. Forget the money, okay? I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to give up 3 first-round picks and change. It wasn't just the 3 first-round picks, but that many picks for Lamar Jackson. Nothing against Lamar Jackson, but that's a lot to give up for a team on the rise, a building team, where you feel like, hey, yeah, I think this team can compete for the playoffs next year with Desmond Ridder at quarterback.
Yeah.
Assuming I'm going to get another 8 pick and I can keep building on that. I just, that's a lot for me. And Gabriel, appreciate you coming in. He says Ridder equals a high ceiling and Mariota was kind of a low ceiling. Yeah, you knew what you were getting. What's kind of weird about Mariota was you think of him as the high floor, low ceiling, steady guy, but he wasn't. He was really bad. Pretty good. He was like player of the week twice, and then awful. It was up and down, and that's kind of why he's been a journeyman quarterback since being a top 5 pick a few years ago. Chris Walker coming in. Morning, guys. Happy to get the win. Allgeier getting 1,000 yards and Ridder playing well. And the third rook and Drake London looked fantastic. That's on my notes. That was the second thing I wanted to hit today. The first thing actually I wanted to hit was to say how thankful we all are that Damar Hamlin seems to be on his way to a full recovery. And the rallying around him and how quickly people started bitching about playoff seeding and home field advantage and all that stuff just 2 days after, Damar Hamlin hits the turf. I mean, priorities, people, don't forget them. I know we're very selfish creatures. I get it. But bigger picture, every once in a while, at least for a week, not just 48 hours. But Tyler, not just the 1,000 yards, he actually broke William Andrews' rookie rushing record. And 17 games. Yes, Tyler played in 16. Remember, he was a healthy scratch. I don't criticize the Falcons often because, again, my expectations are low. I was very critical of that move, Nick, when you got Damian Williams as your backup and you've only suited up 2 running backs.
It must be because of blocking concepts. They probably didn't trust him out there, and he didn't really offer much in special teams. Now, I'm not saying it was the right move. I'm just trying to figure out what logically could lead to that decision, because how much I love Tyler Allgeier. When the Falcons picked him, you gave me a 5-minute runway saying, Nick, you've been screaming about this guy all offseason. Talk to me about Tyler Allgeier. And he looked good. I mean, he's never going to be a get into the open field and off to the races kind of guy, but the vision, the contact balance, footwork, it's all great from him in that regard. He's a really good back. He'll probably never be a super dynamic running back, but if it's
20 yards at a time.
Yeah, it's very true. Hell, I'll take 5 yards at a time. But when it's blocked for him, he's great. They had an outside zone, a wide stretch play for him in this one, where good job by the center Dahlman, combo blocking. And
played well again.
He did play well again. That was he had a pretty. I was watching him for this one. Not perfect, but had played well again. And I mean, Tyler Allgeier is great. I do still think that this Falcons team, if it sets up for them, they should consider running back, because I think this offense runs through the run game still, and we know how volatile that position is. I don't think you should, unless you absolutely think Bijan Robinson is God, I wouldn't probably take one in the top 10. But maybe day 2, maybe paying a running back okay money on the market, considering how deep this class is. If it's short term, it's the long term contracts that scare me with running backs. But it's
because I worry about Caleb Huntley coming back. So you need another guy. If Caleb Huntley, even then bring somebody in that you can compete and stash him on the practice squad if he's if he's a rookie and you need to, or at least draft that guy and have Caleb Huntley on the practice squad again, or injured reserve or something. But there's and I'm not sure. I'm not positive Caleb Huntley's under contract next year, honestly.
I'm not sure,
because he was a practice squad guy. So, I agree with you. Running back should add somebody else here. I like CP in the 10 to 12 touches per game. I like Tyler Allgeier in the 20 touches per game. That leaves, 10 touches available somewhere from a running back spot.
Maybe this might be me being jaded after this season. if you're going to try to run your offense through the run game, you probably want to make yourself a little safer there. That's the ideal situation. You lose one of those guys, though, the entire formula goes to bleep. So I would maybe consider, and we have some running back talk in the draft here. We're going to be getting a lot into the draft, guys. This is a very good running back class. Anthony Evans says Blake Corum is going to be the best back in the draft. Mark my words. I really like Blake Corum, like 5'8", 205 pounds, 210 pounds. Really good inside zone back. We also got the running back from TCU, whose name's came out now. We can watch him tonight. And also Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, you got Zach Chardonnay, you got Zach Evans. I mean, this is a damn good running back class this season that you're going to be able to get solid contributors all the way through the 4th round.
I remember watching Charbonnet, and I think he was a California kid. I'm not positive. Went to Michigan off the bat.
Yes.
He reminded me, his running style reminded me a little of Allgeier. Now that I'm thinking of him, he was kind of a shorter, squattier, slide off you type of guy with decent middle. Finish my point on Allgeier. William Andrews played in 15 games his rookie season. Tyler Allgeier played in 16 games his rookie season, but he actually had less touches than William. So he did it. He had a better average. William Andrews is one of my all-time favorite guys. It's just, when we're talking about comparing, well, they had more games to do it. He actually broke the rookie rushing record in less carries. It was like 210 to 239. So nobody's going to discount what Tyler Allgeier did based on an extra game in the season. He earned it, and he was fantastic this year. And I think I've got a post on the Atlanta Falcons Facebook page that's got over 700 likes on it right now. It's going to end up hitting 100,000 people, where everybody is like, love them both. Yes, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can love them both. I love William Andrews. I love watching Tyler Allgeier play. Coming back through, want to say good morning to some more folks. I think we said, how did I miss Joe? Joe, good morning. Says, great morning, fellas. I feel like I missed Joe in here. Mark coming in on YouTube. He says, howdy, Scott, Nick, Falcons folks. That's all, y'all. And Garner Cigar Brand, he comes in. He says, we should definitely draft DL defensive end at number 8. No brainer. Let's get into this, Nick. We talked about biggest offseason priorities. The draft will be one, but when you're thinking of biggest offseason priorities, what do you think? Garner says DL defensive end at number 8. No doubt. What do you think?
I think ideally, that's where you go. That's where you'd hope to get a talent here. It could be edge. It could be the 5 technique spot opposite of Graham. Hopefully he comes back healthy, which is a question mark as well. But as always, picking that high, sometimes the draft slot doesn't fit the talent available. I think right now you could talk about a number of guys, but when we did the mock draft on, Wednesday last week, they were gone for the most part. So we went elsewhere. But it's definitely a possibility. The other position here that sticks out to me is cornerback. I think cornerback is very much a first to fail system. So if you have one guy not doing his job, the entire secondary isn't doing their job then. And opposite of AJ Terrell right now, I don't know if I trust it. That could be a spot where you're looking to invest, especially with AJ Terrell probably getting a decent contract coming up here. So get that rookie contract guy.
I think he's got one more year, but yeah, he'll play. He's entering his 4th year next year, then his option, and then you'll be working on his extension.
But cornerback stands out for me as well. After that, I guess if it doesn't work out that way, you got to just take the best player on your board. I know you don't like that, Scott, at a position of value. Somebody who maybe could eventually become a tackle, somebody who maybe you think is going to be a really valuable wide receiver. I know people roll their eyes at that, but I mean, you add Quentin Johnson to this, you have probably the most unique trio of height, weight, speed weapons in the entire NFL. So you could go a number of directions. And that's one of the good things about where the Falcons are right now. The other thing is we're talking about the draft. It shouldn't impact it totally, but it will impact it some. Free agency comes first. What does the team look like after you spend all that money? I mean, that's going to change things a lot.
So priorities here, and Garner, just thinking back to the Kyle Pitts pick at number 4, I think we felt the same way at the time there. Diff should be defensive end DL at number 4, no brainer. I agree. There wasn't anybody there. There wasn't the Trayvon Walker, the Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson. The edges weren't in that class. Even a Jordan Davis, there wasn't. I think one guy went in the first round, Christian Barmore, I think, and he may have gone in the second. Like one interior DL didn't even go in the first round. So don't reach. That's the thing, especially this high, and the Falcons are closer, then I'm not going to complain about, you've got promising signs with a young quarterback. The offensive line looks good. I've got free agency money. You're not going to hear me complain about taking a position of value when we're talking about, a BPA here, a best player available in a range. Again, I chide at that phrase every so often because you're not going to get the best player available. People state that as a fact. I'm like, well, did you? Well, why'd you draft Kyle Pitts? He was the best player available. Really? Because Jamar Chase went number 5. He's pretty damn good. It's just, I don't like the phrase, but I get why it's used. So don't reach. That's all we're saying here. You would have done yourself a disservice to reach at number 4 for a defensive lineman, defensive end. But yes, number 1 priority. For me, big priorities in the offseason, Nick. As far as maybe not the most pressing need, but maybe the easiest that you can take care of because you're in control of it and it can start right away. Caleb McGarry needs a new contract. Don't let him hit. Don't let him up the open market free agency. Caleb McGarry has played his way into it. Took 3 years, but you put a first-round draft pick on him. You did not pick up his 5th-year option, rightfully so. I agreed with that at the time, but he has earned himself a new contract. When it's all said and done, he is going to be a top 10 tackle on Pro Football Focus, and he is going to be a $15 million guy. Pay him. You've got the money. The offensive line is in really good shape. You've got Jake Matthews. You've got Chris Lindstrom, who has a chance, Nick, to finish as PFF's highest-rated offensive line. He had a 1.5-point lead going into this week, and I doubt he lost it.
Yeah.
And then Caleb McGarry, 1, 2, 3. Dahlman's improving. I can get left guard. They fixed it pretty well with Eli Wilkinson for $1.2 million in free agency. Offensive line needs to be the strength of this defense. Biggest priority for me, at least earliest, let's re-sign Caleb McGarry.
Yeah, 100%. I don't disagree with you at all. And even with talking about the offensive line, I saw somebody mention Peter Skoronski in here. I think he's more of a guard, but I mean, 2 of the best offenses we've seen so far this season in football have been without elite, no doubt, MVP quarterbacks, have been the Eagles and the Lions, and those teams are littered with high picks on the offensive line. Obviously, it's not the way that you have to go, but I think if all the defensive linemen are off the board, you could talk about Peter Skoronski there playing left guard for a year or 2. You could talk about Paris Johnson Jr. playing that. This just the options for the Falcons make this so fun.
Let's say you had an elite left guard, and then Drew Dahlman either continues the ascendancy or I bring in a really good veteran to compete with him, and the center position improves next year. And I go Jake Matthews, Skoronski, Dahlman, Lindstrom, McGarry, Allgeier with Cordero Patterson coming in and being a change-up guy. My goodness. Now we're talking offensive line, folks.
Yeah, and you would be talking about a offense that it would make it really easy for Ritter because he would not see many too high safety shells. And if he did, you're going to beat the absolute bleep out of that opposing team. And it gives you a pathway, 2 years down the road where if you want to move on from Jake Matthews' massive contract, you could consider that. So it's on the table. It's not ideal, but it's certainly a pathway where you could talk yourself into it.
Millie Mills coming on YouTube. Good morning, Millie. Appreciate you being here. Chris Walker says, still have enough holes that it probably needs to be BPA and team needs combination. Yeah, I've said that a zillion times. The best draft is when a need meets the best player available. And again, you've got a tier of guys, unless at the very top, it becomes a little easier for you. You might have, okay, this guy, I got Will Anderson and I got Jalen Carter, and then I got a drop off. I'm taking one of those 2, even if I took an edge last time, but you play more than one. But my point is, unless it's a quarterback and you've got one, then you want to trade down. So if it completely does not fit a need, like the Bears are sitting at number 1, and I've talked about them as being the most intriguing team in the draft. Now they're sitting at number 1 and they don't want a quarterback. They want to draft out of that position. Yeah. They may that game may have cost the Texans a couple picks to move up to the number 1 spot, or they're going to shop it to the Colts. The Colts are going to say, send me a 1 and a 2 and we'll move down from 1 to 4. It's going to be fun. So yes. Otherwise you've got those tiers of guys and you try and meet a need. And again, as you say, with enough, you've got enough holes there, that best player available, there should be a guy there that fits a premium position, except maybe, like we said, tackle. Unless Nick just said a few minutes ago, you're setting a guy up for the future because you're going to play him at guard in the near future, or you don't sign Caleb McGarry. You got to bring Caleb McGarry back. It's a big one.
Yep. Yeah, and the thing about this draft class specifically is that Paris Johnson Jr. played left guard last season for Ohio State and looked damn good there, and then he moved to left tackle and looks damn good there. And also Peter Skronsky played left tackle, but most people project him on the inside being a Zach Martin caliber guard prospect. I don't think it's the best situation for the Falcons. Honestly, you might even consider a wide receiver there, given the value of that position right now and how I'm excited. Don't take away too much from Quentin Johnson's game tonight, I guess is what I'm going to say, because I could see Georgia.
I don't know, man. Would Georgia give up to who Georgia play last game? Ohio State. They put up 41 on them.
Ohio State probably has the best offensive line in football in pass protection. I don't know how it's going to look for that Texans TCU team from a drop back pass game perspective, but we'll be interested in it. I mean, God, you got to feel good about this Falcons team right now. I mean, we didn't even talk about every single guy. AJ Terrell looking still like a very good cornerback. Richie Grant with that punch out. He's been better and better in the run game all season. You saw flashes from, oh God, there was another young player I was going to mention. I mean, Tyler Allgeier was great. You had Drake London, 120 receiving yards. Falcons going 4 for 4 on, or 3 for 3 on fourth down. I mean, it looked good.
I am with Garner Cigar Brand though. Edge would still be my top priority.
Yes,
if I could go, if I could go. But again, think of the premium positions and what doesn't make sense for the Falcons. If your quarterback is there, let's say CJ Stroud's at 8. Maybe it's not completely off the table. Like you said at the beginning of the show, you're going to have to do your due diligence on this. And maybe Ritter's played his way in where I can trade Ritter in a pick instead of going, 2 high picks. Something. You've got options. Again, I think Ritter's pretty safe. So I'm gonna take quarterback off the board as far as premium positions go. Could you use another wide receiver?
Yeah.
Could you use another cornerback? Could you use an edge?
Yes.
Those are probably the 3 highest ones. Could you use an offensive tackle? Maybe.
Yeah, and the other one is interior defensive line.
And that's not quite as high as the others. I put those as a tier down when it comes to pay scale.
Yes.
As far as like the number 20 edge is going to get paid twice as much as the number 20 defensive tackle. Yeah. It's not quite as premium, but yeah, absolutely. I could use a guy there if there's a killer to be in there. But yeah, the 3 premium positions, corner, edge, wide receiver, I can take any one of those 3 and make a case for it on this team without a doubt.
And if I was ranking them right now, number 1 would be edge just because the value of the position. Number 2, then I might go into your defensive line just because of how this team is set up. A cornerback is right there. Okay. Edge number 1, tied then is cornerback and interior defensive line. I'm going to cheat. We like to talk about tiers. That's tier 2. And then tier 3 is just, BPA at POV. Get yourself a position of value. It could be offensive line. It could be wide receiver. Position of value. Yeah.
That's too many acronyms. Like, what'd you just spell? Anthony Evans says we need to bring back Lorenzo Carter and Michael Walker on 1-year deals. They'd be solid, and get Grady some help at defensive tackle. Anthony, that was one of my other priorities for this offseason. Find some help for Grady. Taquan was really good. How well does he come back? Taquan Graham was a revelation this year. I said when he went down, you're going to find out how good he was. Abdullah Anderson for a practice squad waiver wire pickup did a job. Get some help on those guys. Dave coming in, he says, good morning, guys. And he asked if Tyler fumbled all season. If he did, I don't remember it, but it wouldn't surprise me if he maybe had one that I don't remember. Albert Knoppers coming in on Facebook. And Keith Robbins coming in on Facebook too. And Joe Cannon puts in a vote for Jahmyr Gibbs. That's a good shout. John Pope on YouTube. I'm running through these to say hello because we're going to have to say goodbye. So this is an aloha. We're going to be right at about 30 minutes for the show today on Monday. And then we've got to get going. We're going to hop over to Mile High Huddle to talk Broncos for breakfast. Feel free to join us because we're going to be talking more draft. Mile High Huddle on YouTube. Chris asked one of the college all-star games this year, and first weekend of February. So I'll be at the Shrine Bowl practices all week that week, and I leave like the 30th, 31st, 1st, 2nd, right in there. Antonio Langford, he says, great showing by the rookies yesterday. Yeah, how good do you feel? If you're watching You're Tampa Bay, you're like, wait a minute, Ritter's a rookie, Allgeier's a rookie, London's a rookie. These guys are going to be a handful for a long time. Jamal says, rise up. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jamal. Hope you're doing really well. And Millie Mills comes in. He says, Parsons was there when we were talking about the guys that might not have been available. But you're right. When you have a shot at generational tight end, you got to kind of take it. Defensive ends, outside linebackers come all the time. Tight ends don't. I disagree on that one a little bit, Millie. And one of the reasons why is because Parsons was kind of considered an inside linebacker at the time, which wasn't necessarily as a position of value. In a redraft, you say, yeah, I'll take this guy. And he also had some pretty heinous, a few good men type hazing, bullying incidents at Penn State that wiped him off several teams' boards altogether. The interview process would have been very important to me with that one, and the background checks and all that type of stuff. But in a redraft, Parsons goes ahead of Pitts without a doubt. Without a doubt, Parsons goes ahead of Pitts.
Yeah. I do want to toot my own horn. I had a few tweets saying, hey, Micah Parsons, edge 1 in the 2021 draft class. He was off my board too, based on what I'd heard for the Broncos and his assault allegations. But yeah, we got Daniel Connor coming in saying we need a whole defensive line makeover to get after the quarterback. You're going to spend money there. You're going to spend draft picks there. This defensive
God bless Ade Ogundeji, but I don't want him playing as many snaps next year at this level. Maybe he can get better. Yeah, he can improve, but the level he's played the first 2 years isn't good enough for what the Falcons want to be moving forward. They need another edge. Arnold Ebiketie needs to take a step forward. Bring Lorenzo Carter back. He was only like $3.5 million. Yeah, give him a raise. He may have played his way into a bigger contract. Get him a raise, and then find your number one. If he's there in the draft, go get him. If he's in the free agency and you need to spend 8 figures, 7, 8, 10 million, 12 million, $13 million on an edge, do it. You've got to get some help in there.
Yep.
So on that note, Nick, I think we got to go. That was like the speed dating version. So much to talk about. We will be back on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. On this channel. We'll be going through some of the other teams and what they might be doing, as well as the Falcons. I can't believe 1 and 2 switched. I can, but the Chicago Bears ended up with the number 1 pick, and we'll be talking more Falcons. We're heading over to Mile High Huddle right now to talk Broncos coming off a win, and the hope that they have gotten with a couple of, with a season-ending win. So we'll hit that one. And until then, we'll see you Wednesday at 9. Check us out on falconspodcast.com if you want to listen after the fact. And we appreciate everybody being here.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. Good season.